Today, we're looking at Diamine's Ultra Green. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Diamine's Ultra Green is a green ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples, I put the ink into a different pen for a day, I then put it into a Levenger TrueWriter with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we look at the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately dunk it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this is a true green, not a mix at all. This is a beautiful dark green that does work its way in lighter tones as it's pushing its way up the paper. It goes from very minty to very dark. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And when I see this, I always feel like there's going to be very little resistance to this ink because it looks the same as the original chromatography, except for the fact that I marked that filter paper with a D. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it's handling itself pretty well. That extra fine is still an extra fine. It does start to get the slightest bit of feathering and blurriness in there, but I don't think that's going to affect your notes as in you're going to lose things, making me feel safe using it in a note-taking situation. Now, water doesn't look like it's completely reactivating and lifting the ink. However, if you look to the left part of where that water dot was, you start to see the white of the paper coming through. So this was only 30 seconds, and I really do think that water is all that it's going to take to get this ink out of your pen. Pen Flush is doing the same thing that water did, a little bit more, but I don't think you're going to need to use the extra chemicals. And 1/3 bleach solution, although there's going to be no need to use it, does completely remove this ink from the paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine's Ultra Green has a viscosity of 2.95, making this drier than normal, just barely drier than normal. I really want to call it normal, but it's not. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Diamine's Ultra Green has an average dry time of 18 seconds, making it for the first time, normal. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. That's slipping out. That's because when you disassemble a pen that much to clean it, it's going to loosen up. I might have to replace that pen. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading. Beautiful green. The extra fine is a slightly lighter tone than the 1.1. It's actually quite a bit lighter. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading. 12 seconds to dry. The medium is a slight bit darker than the extra fine, but nowhere near as dark as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 18 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium show color variation, but I'm not seeing any in the writing sample, and the smear test you could certainly recover if you smeared while you were writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding? Yes, we get ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading. The extra fine is a significantly lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. 19 seconds to dry. Medium is a significantly darker tone than the extra fine, but not nearly as dark as the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade, 26 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine is actually showing a lot of color variation, although we got none. The scrubby of the medium shows none, and we got none. And the smear test, I do not think you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine is just a tad lighter. Just a tad lighter than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. You see I wrote daisy, not like the flower, but like lazy with a D, so I put a question mark. It took 14 seconds to dry. The medium is darker than the extra fine. It's the same tone as the 1.1. It had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade, 19 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine again is showing us some color variation, although we got none up there. The medium shows us none, and we got none. And the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. White Lines paper does not do well with this ink. It has a lot of bleed spots coming through all over it, the 1.1, the extra fine, and the medium. You can practically read it through the page, although it does not soak all the way through the page. It does not touch the page underneath. You could not use the back of the page. The 1.1 has spread and a butt-ton of feathering. It's absolutely blurry. It has no halo, no sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the 1.1. The extra fine in performance on the front's much better. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. 3 seconds to dry. Medium doesn't do as well. Medium's got some spread. No feathering, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium both show us plenty of color variation, but we get none in the writing. And the smear test you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Strathmore calligraphy paper. Strathmore writing paper, sorry, not their calligraphy paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is just a tad lighter than the 1.1. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. 6 seconds to dry. Now medium is a darker tone than the extra fine, the same dark tone as the 1.1. Medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. It's looking lighter because we're seeing the color of the page there. No color variation in the scrubby, no color variation in the writing. And the smear test, you could recover it if you smeared while you were writing. This is P. Berger. It's a student grade French rule paper, very thin, a lot of bleeding spots. The 1.1 the extra fine did much better, but it still did not do well. I don't know that you could use the back of the page even with the extra fine. Certainly not for a medium or 1.1. The ghosting's almost irrelevant. The 1.1 has no spread, but it has feathering all over it. It's horrible. Horrible. The word diamine is blurry. I think the first E in green is the only non-feathered letter in all of that. It has no halo, sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is it's like 3 tones lighter than the 1.1. It's like 3 tones lighter. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. 4 seconds to dry. The medium is significantly darker than the extra fine. It's the same dark tone as the 1.1. Medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. 5 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it and we didn't get it. In the smear test, you could recover it. You could if you smeared while you were writing. That's all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine's Ultra Green, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. And instead of going with my normal purple with greens, I really wanted a nice pink, like Robert Oster's Cherry Blossom. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Diamine's Ultra Green? I really like this color, this tone. It's very nice to look at. Although it offers very little in the way of shading, the tone really makes it worthwhile. It makes you want to write more, which for people who like using pens is always a good thing. Thanks for watching.